Well, good afternoon. I just did have a couple of slides to wrap this up. And while we're waiting for that, actually, I may come back to those. No, students, please come here. What we've done is we had asked a group of us students not to take notes, but to give us some reflections on what were your really big take-home messages. You're looking here at the future of the environmental science workforce. So what I'm going to do is I've asked each of them just to take 1 minute and say, what are the really big things that you learned today from your perspective? And what was interesting, we just had 5 minutes thinking about that and the differences of some of the big ideas as you're going to hear. So please come up and have your minute.
Thank you, Dr. Goodwin. My name is Claire Nemes. I'm a PhD student at the Appalachian Lab. And I think that one of my main takeaways from this summit has been, obviously there's been a huge focus on collaboration and that the importance of that for advancing science. And one of the slides that Dr. Goodwin showed early on showed how poll results showed that, like, a lot of people involved in UMCES felt that it has this structure of shared governance and this sort of egalitarianism. So, and that's certainly something that I have felt as a student, is being able to really have, good conversations with the faculty, with fellow students, with faculty research assistants. And so UMCES that's one of the real strengths of UMCES, is that we have this, it's not quite that same hierarchy that you see at other institutions. Which is wonderful, but I think that we also have touched upon that we have a lot of work to do in this regard. And we do need to be thinking about, in our conversations and thinking about collaboration, who is being left out of the conversation and who does not feel included, who does not feel that it is an egalitarian environment. And really, I think that this focus that acknowledging that we have room for improvement and really striving for that as an institution has been really wonderful to hear. I'm really glad that these are conversations that we're having frankly and honestly and openly at all levels. I think that's about it. I really do appreciate that. Okay, thanks.
Hello, everyone. My name is Christina Gothel. I'm a PhD student at the Chesapeake Biological Lab. And my big takeaway from this one was the framework that already exists within UMCES for us to really have some community innovation, both in our local community as UMCES, as our individual units, but also globally, as the map showed of where all of our research takes place in this great institution. And we have the framework and the resources to expand upon that and create more programs like Laura Harris was talking about earlier with Tortuga, and involve communities and address some of those pipeline issues earlier down the line. When we engage in the communities that we work in, we never know who we're reaching and who's hearing those messages that might one day become a graduate student at UMCES. So one of the other things, in our little side meeting that Dr. Goodwin just spoke about was outreach for our local UMCES labs. And we were discussing IMET versus CBL, and CBL's got this outreach coordinator position and maybe interfacing with IMET and doing some outreach in Baltimore and the other community labs as well. We just spoke as the IMET and the CBL students. So community innovation and using the framework that we've already built at this institution. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Anna, and I work here at IMET. I'm a PhD student. There's two main things that really stuck with me from this whole summit, and the first one is the question of recruitment. How do we improve recruitment in earlier stages? And I think the answer to that is representation. Getting a diverse group of graduate students or faculty out, getting them into schools, talking to kids, talking to just anybody who might be interested about what we do, how we do science, and how there's really all kinds of people that do science and are interested in science. So I think representation is a great way to start. And as I said, outreach and coordinating that in the different labs could be a really great place to start. And the other thing is living in Baltimore, really, when I started grad school here, I really wasn't aware of the efforts of, that we work with the government and nonprofits to clean up the Bay. And I think if we get more students and more faculty involved in that as well, and just promote outreach in general, we can really make progress in that. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Susie Spitzer. I am a grad student, PhD student at the Integration Application Network. I had 3 major takeaways. Basically, I'll go really fast. So we constantly came up with this big ideas and think big and complex problems. And we identified a lot of different institutional barriers that are in place at UMCES that are kind of preventing us from doing the kind of collaborative and converging research that we're all saying is so important for answering these big questions. So I think some of the themes from today that UMCES should invest in are, one, building partnerships with stakeholders outside of the university system and outside of the academic system, which other people have talked about, so I won't go into detail. Number 2, building diversity, both culturally and disciplinarily. So hiring more academics that are social scientists, hiring maybe professors that are humanities experts, and really honing in on that interdisciplinary study. And then the third one is building sort of a one UMCES identity. So removing some of those barriers to collaborating across labs. The geographic dispersion of our campus is an asset, but it's also sometimes something that gets in the way of collaborating together. So those were my 3 take-homes. Thanks.
Hello, my name is Blake Clark. I'm a PhD student at Horn Point Lab. I guess one of my takeaways in terms of research was the thread that sort of ran through most of the sessions here today, and that's climate change. We just saw the report that came out on Friday. Pretty alarming to most people, I guess, who don't kind of look at these issues on a day-to-day basis. And in terms of that, I think that there's a real potential to tackle climate change on an institutional level in terms of research. And that could lead to also recruiting students who are specifically interested in tackling climate change in terms of their research. And the way that this could be done in terms of sort of this big idea is potentially establishing an entity that's across entire UMCES, but also involving other institutions within the University System of Maryland, to bring in people who study economics, who study social issues, who study issues related to adaptation, so that we can bring together an actual research entity to describe and address specific local and regional issues related to climate change in the near and maybe more distant future.
Thank you, Blake, and thanks to all of the students. As most of you are aware, this is the smartest generation that this world has ever experienced. And I think with that, Governor's office in California. And I'm not quite sure where these students come from, but they come to us with a great sense of social justice, environmental justice, knowledge, and wanting to make a difference at a scale that certainly I think my generation had no awareness of at that age. So thank you, and sorry to put you on the spot like that. So as wrapping up, I would just like to add a couple of other things. I think the importance and the value of UMCES as being the honest broker of science for the state is unique. And further, we have this long-term commitment. We're not going anywhere. So administrations come and go, political things change, but UMCES will be here for that continuity. I'd like to re-emphasize, I think every one of those grad students mentioned diversity, and I thought we had some great ideas of what we can do internally with those students we have right now. But also I'd like to emphasize the importance of the face of the environmental workforce reflecting the face of America. This is something that Denise Barnes at NSF pushed for the 2 or 3 decades she was at NSF. And you think about the consequences of that, it is so important. Think Flint, Michigan. Think coastal Louisiana. Think the Columbia Basin and the Native American tribes. Think of the Native Alaskans, the folks who are really being affected by the Arctic. If people from these communities are not represented in the science that's being developed, we're really missing something. The next thing I heard was the adaptive management or adaptive strategies, that these are very complex, there's a lot of uncertainty. How we actually develop efficient management strategies. And we heard some great ideas. It was just a passing comment, but a hackathon. If you recall, President Obama had some very successful hackathons in the White House. And that kind of concepts for brainstorming, I think, is something we haven't considered in this state. And perhaps the last thing is our ability to share technologies, experience. We're very, very good at doing these small postage stamp activities or management actions. But we really don't know, with the challenges we're going to have to face, these are going to be on a scale that is beyond anything that's been done before. So building networks of similar systems, similar states and countries that are conducting science on a sufficient scale where we can really understand and test our understanding and predictive capability. So with that, I would like to thank everyone for attending, particularly our invited guests who came in and I think gave us an outside perspective, the folks from outside UMCES. And my one request is that you stay engaged with us. The next step is we're going to absorb everything that we've heard today and to try and synthesize that into some specific strategic actions that we can take as an institution. And as we've seen in virtually everything, we're going to need strategic partnerships. So please stay engaged. The last thing that I would say is that so many people have been involved in the organization of this. It's hard to run through a list, but I would just like to pick out Lynn Wren, our Vice President for Administration in the back there, Dave Namazi. Thank you, Lynn. Dave Namazi, our Chief of Staff. See Kurt in the back there, who heads our IT. Fantastic job with the technology. Laurie Stepp, who runs the President's Office. And Monica Chacon, and the folks here in IMET for hosting us. And I probably missed a lot of other people, so if you could also give an applause for everyone that I missed and I'm going to get hammered from. Thank you. So thanks again. We have to be finished and out of here, but for those of you who want the IMET tour, it's going to be very brief, but the stuff that's going on here is truly remarkable. So do that. But thanks again for everyone being here, and please stay engaged.